Well, hey, everybody. I've got Britt Gillette with me today, and most of you know who he is and what he's about. What was your topic about your first one, and then now your second one? What are we talking
So
about?
we talked today about molecular manufacturing, which is a technology that I believe is going to lead to global empire, directly to global empire. And on Sunday, we're going to talk about the greatest financial crisis ever is on the way. It's coming. We just don't know exactly when it's going to hit, but all the signs are there. And of course, they have a solution waiting in the wings. We all know what that is. So those are the topics.
I thought the greatest financial calamity was 2008. We haven't gotten there yet.
No, what happened in 2008 really was a shadow of the Great Depression.
Yeah.
It wasn't even there.
Yeah.
But what's coming, I think it's going to be worse. It's going to be more severe than the Great Depression, but not as long in duration. But it's going to be very jolting when it happens.
Yeah, I was, so the other day, a friend of mine hit me up and said, "Hey, I want to see if you want to give some donations for we're going to go get some food for some soldiers down at Fort Hood." And I'm thinking, like, Fort Hood, like, I've been to Fort Hood, like, why are we giving them money for? I'm thinking this out loud. He goes, I was like, I just got a curiosity, what's this for? What it's about? He goes, the shutdown, government shutdown. I was like, oh, that's right, they aren't getting paid. And so now these E1, E2, E3, E4 soldiers are standing in line at 5 a.m. for hours on end just to get 30 pounds of food from this pantry. And then we're donating money to pick up food from Costco and take all that stuff down to, 2 or 3 hours to Fort Hood. And there was even like captains standing in line. And, captains make pretty good money. And to see that, and the guy was telling me, he was like, it's kind of startling to think that even it's starting to hit the officers because the cost of living just doesn't match. The pay doesn't match the cost of living anymore. So what used to be, say you made $100,000 a year, which is pretty good. Back in the day, that was a good salary. Now that's really like making what, 60,000, 70.
So this is all intentional. So they deflated the currency. It used to be gold and silver, and now it's pieces of paper. Even coins used to be real silver. So, one of the things that I often hear from my dad used to say this all the time was, back when I was growing up, we could go to the local drive-in and we could get a burger for $0.25 and we could get fries for $0.10. And the reality is you can do that today if you've got a pre-1964 quarter or dime because they're 90% silver. And you look online and those go for $8 and $4 a piece.
Yeah.
So, you could probably still do that today. And if you look back at the federal minimum wage back then in 1963 was $1.25. So that's 5 of those silver quarters. So that's $40. So where is the minimum wage? $40. That's $80,000 a year. That's not the minimum wage even in California. And so slowly over time, they've stolen from us. The government figures on inflation are fake. They're made up. And the reason is because of cost of living adjustments. They don't want to have to pay the military more. They don't want to have to pay Social Security recipients more. So they say, well, inflation was 3% when it was 12%. And then in the meantime, they're sprinting more and more and more. It's terrible.
Thinking about that, so with this coming economic crash, unlike anything we've seen, do you think that the intention is to get everybody hooked onto UBI? That's kind of the end state where the government comes out and says, okay, we know the economy crashed. Here's this new credit card with attached to this new digital version of the dollar or whatever. And then that's what people are going to begin to rely on for their government dependence from Uncle Sugar, right?
Perhaps. I think the point is to hook people on digital currency and tokenized assets, digital IDs. So whether UBI is a form of that system remains, but even the people that aren't on UBI and don't need that, they want them inside the system so they can be controlled.
Yeah.
So we're seeing this digital currency. They want to roll it out, and almost every nation has a pilot program or something where they can roll it out. Even here in the United States, when you look at the Genius Act under President Trump, he said, well, no central bank digital currency, but they're pushing the stable coin that's backed by the dollars. And when you look at the legislation behind that, plainly states must be in compliance with the Bank Secrecy Act, anti-money laundering rules, and it must be programmed so that it can be frozen or seized by the government, by lawful order of the government. So they can simply take it from you. They can cut you off. So how is it indistinguishable in any way from central bank digital currency? So yeah, it's the same. It's the same thing with just a different name on it, essentially.
So there's no escaping this. What you're saying?
No, eventually, no. Yeah, there is no escaping this other than the rapture of the church, probably.
Right. Yeah.
But a lot of this is rolling out already. I mean, if you're in China, you're seeing central bank digital currency already.
There's
so
probably,
depending on where you live, you might already have it.
How many nations are now fully kind of like at least half invested in this?
98% of GDP
Yeah.
is exploring central bank digital currency. So I think it's 158 nations, but it's the ones that matter, the biggest ones that make up most of the world economy. They're all pushing it independently, right? So they're all coming to the same conclusion.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking too about this the other day with the vote on Israel, with the United Nations on trying to recognize a Palestinian state. It seems like all of the major nations that are invested in doing this and pushing this, they themselves, those countries are in terrible shape, and they're having all sorts of problems. You got even Canada is threatening, the western provinces are threatening to break away, Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia. And you got that country, you've got the UK in shambles, you've got the French government collapsing in real time. The Holland, most of Europe, Central Europe is just kind of overrun with this immigration issue, weaponized immigration. It just seems like the whole world is kind of doing exactly what it talks about in Zechariah 12. They're just going to destroy themselves as they try to separate Israel from Jerusalem, or trying to divide the land, or even divide the city of Jerusalem. Now these nations are just like being crashed against these rocks, So where do you think that this ends up in the next, between now and 2028 with the next election? I'm presuming it's going to be Vance that will run if we're still here. And
I'm not sure the exact timeline of how all this will roll out. I know in Europe, for instance, the European Union is pushing a digital euro, and it has to get through European Parliament, so they're pushing that. But they've already started the infrastructure.
Yeah.
A dozen tech companies working on this, building this together with the intent of a full rollout by 2029. And so it's very dangerous, the central bank digital currency, because it really bypasses the entire banking system in Europe. So each of these is different, but Europe is proposing a true central bank digital currency where the average citizen would have a wallet with the European Central Bank, which would be the equivalent in the United States of having a digital wallet with the Federal Reserve. And all of your digital currency is held in that wallet, and it's centrally controlled, meaning they're able to see every buy-sell transaction you make, and they can program it. So they could determine, well, we don't like the video that you did today, Pete. So now you can't use your currency outside of a 1 mile radius of your home. Put you under house arrest, or just cut you off altogether. Whatever they want to do will be at the whim of the government. They would have all of that power, central bank. And so, the real threat in Europe that we see is when they roll this out, there's a debate right now over holding limits, the digital euro. That may seem counterintuitive. Well, why would you put holding limits? They want to cap it at 3,000 euros right now. Well, that doesn't seem to make any sense. Why are you doing that? Well, they're doing that because that's what they have to agree to get it passed. Because if they make the holding limits unlimited, it will destroy the banking system.
Yeah.
So ING did a study where they showed that the digital holding limit of 3,000 euros, 9% of the deposit base would flee the European banking system. And at 5,000 euros, it would be 12%. And so if you had an uncapped limit, you would start to see bank runs at that point where people think, and businesses especially that are above the insured limit would say, well, our cash is not safe at the local bank, but held in digital euros with the central bank, it is, because they cannot go bankrupt. They are the issuer, the monopoly issuer of digital euros. And so it creates an incentive structure for everyone in the European Union to move their funds out of the banks and into the European Central Bank held accounts, destroying the banking system in the process and putting everyone under the control of the European Central Bank that's dealing with euros. But this would have repercussions for the entire world because some of the most important banks in the world are in Europe. And if they're crashing, that's going to spread contagion all over the world.
You don't think that they would look to the United States as an option to bypass this? Is that good for the U.S. is what I'm asking?
Sure.
Or
well, that's in large part, that's why we're seeing the European Central Bank do this, is they feel threatened. They feel their monetary sovereignty is threatened by the United States, because right now, as far as electronic payment options in Europe, it's dominated by Visa, MasterCard, Google Pay, Apple Pay, a whole bunch of tech companies based in the United States. And so they see this as necessary to counter U.S. dominance over their monetary policy. And so that's why they're pushing that. And there's really, it's basically a race to see, is it going to be stable coins or digital euro that reign? Because they don't want their citizens fleeing to the perceived safety of U.S. dollar-backed stable coins, because that takes that power away from them.
Yeah, I always kind of thought the rapture was going to be the crisis that causes the world to kind of go in that direction. Do you think that it's possible before the rapture, or do you think that it's going to have to be some crisis of the same magnitude?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I happen to think that probably it is a high probability, and I've been talking with some people this past couple of days about this, because for years I've wondered, how does this whole thing hold together? Because our whole financial system, it really is a Ponzi scheme. I say it's a Ponzi scheme built on a house of cards, constructed on a foundation of lies. I don't know how it has not unraveled at this point, other than the hand of God.
The mystery of lawlessness is holding it together.
Right. And the moment the rapture occurs, I think that certainly would just set it off. It would be like throwing a match on the powder keg.
Yeah. And I've got young kids too, and what's the message to the kids when we talk, like I'll talk today on my talk about the things coming upon the earth, and it seems like it's all kind of doom and gloom, yet for the Christian, it's not. I mean, things will get kind of dicey for going forward. We don't know how bad it will get exactly before the Lord returns, but this is, when you think about it, this is the closest to hell we'll ever be. And for most of the unsaved world, this is the closest to heaven they'll ever be, which is sad. But how do we convey this message to kids in a way that is hopeful, uplifting, and is able to, because I want them, it's hard to talk, especially the teenagers, where you're basically telling them, hey, there's no future, in this world, this life, but how do you convey that in such a way for them? I guess it's shifting their perspective from the temporal, from the here and now, to the eternal. Would you?
Right. Yeah, I would agree. We talk about the joy that's to be had when Christ comes back. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm sorry, what's that?
No, nothing.
Oh, okay. The joy that's to be had when Christ comes back. And we should be joyful in what we see coming. I mean, no matter what age we're at. We shouldn't be thinking about what things we might miss here on earth, which I know is probably what maybe some people who are younger might think, well, I'm going to miss out on this milestone or that milestone. It pales in comparison to what Jesus has to offer and the riches that are available to us. And so I would say we should all be filled with joy that know Christ, but we should all be filled with a sense of urgency to share the good news with a lost and dying world.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the financial aspect of all of this is what I found to be one of the most easiest approaches when you're talking to the unbeliever about where we are in the world. I mean, when you have Joe Rogan and this other, I don't know who the guy that was with him talking about the digital currency and all that stuff, and then they went directly into Revelation 13, and even a guy like Joe Rogan could read that and be like, oh man, that makes sense. We're the only generation that actually does make sense, because before this, the most somebody could think about, say in the year 1900 or the 1950 even, would be of like, what is the mark of the beast? How can that be? And they're probably thinking some kind of a tattoo, just a normal tattoo, but that tattoo wasn't linked to anything like it could be today. Now we have so many different options, so many different ways it could take place. It's not how, but which one, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely, because previous generations outside of the supernatural couldn't have a mark of the beast system. The technology wasn't there. Today, our generation sees that. When you take that with all the other signs we see, I like to point out, Israel as a nation, as a modern day nation state, it's only been around 77 years. Many people tend to take that for granted because it's been so long. It's been their whole lifetimes for most people. But for 93% of Christian history, that includes up until the year 70, right? 93% of Christian history, there was no nation of Israel.
Yeah.
Today there is, and all these other signs that Jesus and the prophets talked about, especially when we look at this mark of the beast infrastructure, I say, that's being built, because it really is indistinguishable in capability and function from the mark of the beast system. It won't be the mark of the beast until the tribulation, but it can do the same things. It has the exact same capabilities, and we're seeing this rolled out globally as we speak.
Yeah. Let me ask you another question here. In Revelation 6, it talks about the four horsemen, right? And I always believed that the rider on the white horse was obviously the Antichrist. But given the fact that the other horsemen don't seem to be necessarily individuals, they seem to be movements or the spirit of something moving forward, like the spirit of war, the spirit of economic calamity, and all those maybe harbingers of evil. Do you think that the rider on the white horse is the system of the Antichrist, or do you think it's the individual? And I get mixed.
Could be both. Yeah, could be both. I think that's what brings in the Antichrist, whether you want to say it's the Antichrist or not.
Yeah,
I believe that's what we're seeing at the beginning of the tribulation, with the conquering of the world for the Antichrist to control.
Yeah.
And the issues that would bring with it, disrupted supply chains that lead to famine, global destruction, World War III. That Revelation 6 tells us there will be a World War III, and that's something that for most of our lives we've been told humanity won't survive. That's the conventional wisdom. I believe Albert Einstein famously said, I don't know with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones.
Yeah.
And with the understanding that it would just be such cataclysmic destruction that humanity wouldn't even survive it. But the Bible tells us otherwise, because we read later in the book of Revelation that there's great wealth in the world. And so something dramatic is going to change in years ahead.
Speaking of molecular manufacturing, one of the things I just thought about this the other day, you might have touched on it, others might have, and I just heard it in passing, and I thinking it's something unique to me. But in the battle of Gog and Magog, it seems like the some of the weapons that they're fighting with is pretty antiquated, right? And we're trying to make sense of it from a modern perspective. If this is a modern war, obviously they didn't know what missiles and rifles and things like that were, but could it be possible that in the age of molecular manufacturing, if you had to put together weapons for an army that large, and you had the means to produce weapons, but they had to be simple weapons like swords, spears, could you mass produce those things on the molecular manufacturing level at a carbon? And I think carbon burns, right?
Yeah, you could mass produce them. I'm not sure what good they would do in an age of drone warfare, but if you could,
good point. Yeah. But I think if you had an army that was so massive that you could afford to lose 100 million soldiers and still win, just by the overwhelming force and the fact that they're coming in from every direction. We would run out of bullets, or let's say Israel would run out of bullets before they ran out of soldiers to throw at them. And that was the kind of the old adage about fighting the Chinese on a even keel kind of battlefield. We would run out of bullets first, right? But if you can manufacture your own weapons, and they didn't have to be complex, they could just be. I mean, we saw what they did with October 7th. That's a small scale, but just the sheer number, I think, would be terrifying. But I don't know. I've got to think about, a friend of mine was talking about, well, there's not 60 million horses on the earth. There's only 60 million horses on the earth. So how can you have 2 million army with horsemen? And I'm thinking, well, there's got to be a reasonable explanation for that. These are probably not human. It might be some kind of demonic army or whatever, but it will happen that way. But I thinking back to Gog and Magog, that this army is so massive, there's no way they're going to be able to arm all those people. Even if they gave everybody a rifle, the logistics of giving everybody a full magazine of AK, 5.56 or whatever, I just don't know. But maybe if they were able to mass produce simple weapons, and this sheer number of these people coming in, it could be catastrophic in its own, or at least that's what they're banking on, right? So, but before molecular manufacturing, that wouldn't be possible. You'd be, dependent upon some kind of a supply chain, and you just disrupt that supply chain, and then boom. So, all right. Well, any closing thoughts? Any ideas?
Well, if you ever get a chance to come out, if you get a chance to come to the Prophecy Watchers Conference this weekend, we'd love to see you. It's a great time here. If you've never been, book your trip for next time, because you get to meet so many wonderful people. And this is the first one I've ever been to. And it's
really?
Great. Yeah, never been here.
Oh, wow. I could have sworn you were the last one. I remember the first one I was at in Colorado, man, I was so nervous. Oh my gosh. I was in a really small room, and I was doing the book of Jude, and Tom Hughes and his wife knew it was my first time. They didn't have to stay, but they were in the back cheering me on like my cheerleaders, giving me confidence. And so I got through that. And then I spoke in the big conference room 2 years ago, and my talk was The Vanishing Point, and it was so not slide heavy, but I had so much information on these build slides I had that I started getting cotton mouth really bad. And I didn't have a bottle of water up there with me. And I was like, oh, rookie mistake, So thankfully somebody saw me like my lips sticking together or something, and like handed me up a bottle of water. So rookie mistake, right? So anyways, yeah, it was good having you, man. It's been good being your friend all these years. Hopefully we can do more stuff together. And it was good seeing you in Kentucky. And I don't know, you guys going back out to Winchester anytime soon, or?
I don't know. We'd like to. We'd always love to go out there, but I don't know that it's nothing's on the calendar right now.
Yeah. But a lot of churches are hungry. A lot of people are hungry out there, and they're not getting fed in their local congregations. So I think we serve a vital role in all this. But anyways, good seeing you again, brother.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. God bless you.